Happy 4th of July. For the first time on the HopeFilled Financial Podcast, I have foregone the iconic bow tie and gone with a traditional tie. This one in particular features a steam engine and red, white, and blue smoke coming out of the smokestack there for the steam engine. It's a tie that I got from my dad before I was really into bow ties, and it's something that I thought would be more appropriate since I don't have a red, white, and blue bow tie. Bow ties are something that I've collected for a while. You could consider it a hobby of mine, but it's far from the most expensive hobby I've ever had. That's going to be bowling. Bowling is a uniquely American sport. Bowling originated as a yard game called kegling. You would take a ball. It's kind of like yard bowling, but it was a little different. And the idea was to knock over the kegels. Throughout history, it eventually developed into something known as 9-pin bowling. We're talking really early America here. 9-pin bowling became incredibly popular as a pastime, as a sport, as a hobby for early Americans, but it also came with this bizarre draw to gambling. Now, the federal government saw gambling as something that would be toxic for society and something that they needed to purge, because it was almost impossible to separate 9-pin bowling from the gambling that's associated with it. There is a federal law that was passed that simply outlaws 9-pin bowling in the United States. As a result of this, you had a whole bunch of bowling houses, indoor bowling houses that had the wooden lanes and everything almost as you know them now, naturally no machinery. But what were they going to do with these if 9-pin bowling is illegal? Well, innovative Americans classically simply worked their way around the law by adding a 10th pin. And they moved the pins from being in a diamond shape to being the triangle shape as we know them today. So that's where 10-pin bowling comes from. And the federal government was like, well, if we outlaw 10-pin bowling, they're just going to add another pin. So we might as well just let it go. We can't take away their bowling in order to prevent them from gambling. And if we took it away, they'd just find something else to gamble on. Gosh darn it. And gambling is still fairly closely associated with bowling today, but that's not why I was into bowling. I was competitive. I was wanting to be a semi-pro or even professional bowler back when I was in high school. I had joined a league when I was 14 and was given my first 2 bowling balls. At the time, I didn't realize how much of a gift those were. Shout out to Shane, my bowling coach and the operator of Burning Mountain Bowl back when it was still a bowling alley. That bowling alley's been converted into a church since then. I've actually been to a wedding there. I digress. I got into bowling. I got my first 2 bowling balls gifted to me by Shane, and I didn't realize how expensive they were at the time. His hand roughly fit mine, so I didn't need to re-drill them or anything. But as I got more bowling balls, it occurred to me that a new bowling ball ran somewhere between $200 and $300 by the time you got it drilled. And you need a lot of bowling balls to do bowling. If you ask almost any league bowler or tournament bowler, hey, how many bowling balls do you need? They're probably going to tell you 1 more. And that was the thing. You always needed 1 more bowling ball, and they were coming out with new ones that did different things. The weights were different. There's a lot of science that went into bowling, and it was addictive to my nerdy brain. It was like the perfect blend of science and sports, but it got expensive. Bowling is not something that you can just practice at home. And if you want to go and you want to practice it, it's not going to be free. It costs money to go bowling on the regular. It costs money to join a league. It costs money to enter into tournaments. So there is an investment for bowling. I had 10 bowling balls at most, even though I'd only take 6 or 7 to any given tournament. But that begs the question, is bowling something that I, as a financial coach, in hindsight, would consider to be frugal? Well, I don't think it's necessarily frugal or unfrugal. I think there's a propensity for bowling to be frugal. It's always going to cost money. Now, I can't, in general, rank the good or the happiness, the joy or the utility that somebody gets out of a given hobby. So if I'm looking at bowling as a hobby and I'm looking at the frugal level that bowling could be, I have to look at the overall expense. I'm going to say that bowling is probably less frugal of a sport than doing something like soccer. For soccer, you need cleats and you need a ball at a bare minimum, and you can go out to a soccer field and kick a ball around and practice for free. You can't do that with bowling. You're going to need shoes. You're going to need multiple balls. At a minimum, you need 3 bowling balls, in my opinion, if you're taking it really seriously. And every time you practice, you gotta put some money forward. So I'd say soccer is more frugal than bowling, but that's not to say you can't go about bowling in a frugal way. I did buy a number of bowling balls used, and I leaned on gifts, and I did my best to go about bowling in the least expensive way possible. And it was still an outlet for physical exercise, and it was still a way that I could earn money. I earned scholarships bowling those tournaments. So there was also a return on it. I don't know if I would have had that same opportunity as a soccer player. I didn't have talent when it came to soccer, but I was decent at bowling. The biggest tournament I ever bowled was the 2013 USBC Youth Open held in Detroit, and I ended up averaging 215 for that tournament. I recall being ranked in, I think, the top 12 or 12.5% of scratch bowlers under the age of 20. And that was sort of my peak when it came to bowling. As of late, I haven't been bowling as much. I'm currently not in a league. I haven't bowled in a tournament in a number of years. And I sold most of my bowling balls that didn't end up split in half. Thinking about bowling as a uniquely American sport, or hobby, if you will, got me thinking that for the 4th of July to celebrate, our main topic should focus on the top hobbies in America and how frugal they can be.